Taylor, Keith Burns, the Pledge of Allegiance, four-way test, Gloria Jordan, and David Ellis with the song. So yay to that.
Please bow your heads and pray with me.
Yes.
Thank you, Father God, for this day. Thank you for allowing us to come together and do your work, Lord. Please bless each meal and everything that we do. Amen.
Amen.
Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Four-way test of the things we think, do, or say. First.
Is it true?
Second.
Is it fair to all concerned?
Third.
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
And fourth.
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Ooh, you got the guitar.
Okay, let's open up. Who's happy to be here today? Well, let's sing number 38. Tell me how happy you really are. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. Number 38. Ready? Here we go. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, then your life will surely show it. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, stomp your feet. If you're happy and you know it, stomp your feet. If you're happy and you know it, then your life will surely show it. If you're happy and you know it, stomp your feet. Happy and you know it, Rotary.
Rotary.
If you're happy and you know it, Rotary.
Rotary.
If you're happy and you know it, then your life will surely show it. If you're happy and you know it's a Rotary.
Rotary.
Yeah!
Wait, the CD comes out on that? Oh, we can sit down now.
All right.
Thank you. Just steady.
Today it looks like we have two guests. Willie Morgan has a guest, which some of you may have met before. Why don't you tell us who your guest is?
Stand up, Byron. My guest today is Mr. Byron Taylor. He is the CEO for the Greenville Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you for having me today. Thanks very much.
And in case y'all missed it, we had an amazing banquet last week. It was awesome. Yeah, sure enough. And Charles Shirey has a visitor today.
Yeah, Dr. Jimmy Nicholson.
Hi, Dr. Nicholson. Welcome. Okay, anybody else have any guests that we missed? We're pretty good. Okay, let's get to...
I'm happy to be here. You're singing well this morning. Anybody have any announcements they want to make? Oh, I should have guessed.
Yes. I hope everybody finished all their auction stuff and they turned them in today.
Right. Sure.
Okay. So, you guys, this is our last meeting before the Chili Fest. It is very urgent and it is very important that you get your items turned in to me, preferably by Friday, so I can get them to Gloria, so she can merge our bid sheets before Tuesday, because we will be setting up the auction Wednesday from 12 to 2 in here. We need about 10 people. We need to set up tables and we need to set all the auction stuff up. So if you can be here, that's great importance. But the most important right now is, you guys, we only have about 120 items and we normally have over 200. So definitely, I'm not pointing any fingers, but some people aren't doing their job. So grab your sheets, get to work the next few days, and if you can't work your sheets, maybe ask somebody who does work sheets to help you, because we really need these items turned in. Most of the sheets that are given to everybody are people that donate year after year after year. So you can get them to my office. You guys, I'm at Carroll Square by Ernie's Barbecue, Suite C. Go straight to the back in between Century Computer and the barber shop. I really prefer them to be turned in on or before Wednesday, because literally we'll be sitting here having to handwrite and make out bid sheets. You guys, please try to get your stuff done this week if at all possible. The last final day to turn stuff in is going to be the 24th. If you come later than that, you will literally run the auction next year. Okay. I'm happy.
Wow, Debbie. lay it on.
It's a threatening happy. That's what that was.
That was a good one, Debbie.
I just want to say, everybody got their volunteer sheets emailed through Club Runner. If you didn't get it, let me know and I'll send you a copy. But we just need a few more desserts like cakes and pies. We got plenty of cookies. And I think, and everybody that's going to L3, make sure you bring your desserts with you that day. And we'll be there from 10 to 1, and we'll probably need to be there 30 minutes early to register and all walk in together. If you have any questions, call me.
Just a reminder about four-way test speech and scholarship. There are deadlines coming up next week for the speech contest, and there in March is our scholarship. So if you know a high school senior, they're eligible for the speech contest, and if you know a senior, then they're eligible for the scholarship.
Very good. I'm moving across the room.
I'm just happy that Debbie is in charge of the auction. Okay?
Every Rotarian is happy about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Happy table. Okay. Very good. Thank you, guys. Roxanne, I'll make my way over there in a minute.
Greenville Educational Foundation will have the spelling bee. That will be Friday the 28th, so it's going to be right after us doing the Chili Fest. And it's adult spelling bee, adult beverages will be at Innovations First. And I hear that, and I'm hoping you take in a lot of adult beverages. So we still can use teams or just come along and cheer us on. And Byron is going to be our MC.
Nice.
W-I-N-E.
I'm just thankful to be here.
Okay, Roxanne, we're going to limit to 10 minutes for your happy.
I'm just happy Byron is here with us today.
Okay, David? Okay, looking good, guys. Oop.
I'm happy this morning. I was invited to attend a delegation from the Rotary Club with Katie, Josue, myself, and Roz. And we went over to Bowie School and we spoke to every class there from kindergarten through 5th grade and made a short presentation to them about their upcoming polio fundraiser next week. They're calling it the Pennies War. And like some of you, many of them have never heard of polio. Isn't that a great thing that they live in here in the United States, are getting vaccinated, and they're not having, any of them having polio. It was an honor to be asked to do that, and it was just joyful to watch the expression on those children's face. And we're going to be surprised how much money they raise.
Katie, can you remind me what these Happy Bucks is going for this month? Trying to remember, it's been a while.
Yeah, I'll get back to you. Keep Greenville beautiful.
Keep Greenville beautiful.
That's why I have
Thank you,
people that know what they're doing.
Okay. Well, where's my bucket? Byron Taylor, would you pick out the lucky number for us today?
Use this one.
That does tend to happen a lot. Whoever the guest is.
I like my chances then.
It's me. Just don't.
Read the number.
Read the
slow.
number. Read the number.
Hold on. We had a party foul here.
We're going to have to do it again.
Redraw.
Because she...
That is so wrong.
Let's check if this is my number, then I win.
Yeah.
I'm just a guest.
We don't even want to know that. It was probably CJ's. And this next one will be Dave's. The next one will be Dave's sister.
Yeah, right? Probably
Way down, don't get one of those that he just threw in there.
Okay. Now we ready? Now pick one.
8, 5, 9, 9, 3, 0.
lottery draw.
If you draw, it's over $1,000.
That's right, 930.
That's 2 out of 3.
There's not a lot of cards left, but keep going fast. Ian's got it.
Pretty close.
Yay, so close. So close, not really at all. Okay, I have a couple of things. I'm going to elaborate a little bit on the on penny wars, but first I want to tell you that we have some t-shirts in the back against the back railing that Kendall lined out by size. These are t-shirts that, I don't know if you guys saw us wearing them last week when we talked about our trip to Cozumel. These are shirts that that actually Cam and Kayed, it was Kayed's school, actually had made for us and for the members of the school and the teachers. So this is really cool because it has the Greenville, Texas logo, it has Cam and Kayed's school, and then the Cozumel Rotary logo on there. So they had these made for us and handed them out. So if you would like one of these, please pick them up in the back. Kim said that she meant to tell everybody this last week and forgot. So this is the only, I can't read it, but it's super large. So I think that's the only one of the giant ones back there. The next thing that I was going to talk about very quickly is what David talked about this morning. So about a month or so ago, I actually worked with Dr. Liggins on trying to figure out a fundraiser that we could do for polio in the school district. And so I wanted to get into one of the elementary schools. So number one, we get Rotary in the elementary. Rotary, Rotary, Rotary. Who are we and what do we do, right? But let's pair that with a polio fundraiser. And so Dr. Liggins set me up with Miss, I always get this wrong, Habutzel at Bowie Elementary, and she has agreed to do what they call penny wars. Now let me tell you about what this is. It's really, really cool. So they have those giant sparklet bottles in the middle of what they call the commons area. So the middle of all of the, where all the halls are. And all next week, Monday through Friday, they are going to be having, they're going to be doing penny wars for us. And that is where a penny is a positive. So pennies for polio is positive. They get points for every penny that they put in their bucket. They get negative points. They get points removed for every nickel, dime, quarter, or dollar that goes into their bucket. So they're going to want to put pennies into their bucket and nickels, dimes, quarters, and dollars into everybody else's buckets, right? So this is not just pennies, y'all. And thankfully, Alliance Bank has agreed to let us use their sorter for free. He doesn't know. I went right past him and talked to Paul. So next week, Bowie Elementary is going to be collecting all of this money and giving it to us for our polio fundraiser for End Polio Now. Awesome. And we, and the four of us, Josue and Roz and David and I went and literally spoke to every single classroom one at a time this morning and got them really excited. Of course, the thing they're most excited about, they were excited to not be working for a couple of minutes, but they were most excited because the winning grade level will get a pizza party. So pizza for polio, how about that? That's a new fundraiser. So I wanted to let y'all know that that's what's going to be happening, and the principal has agreed to come and speak to the club and share how much that they raised for us when it's over. Okay, the only other thing I have is, whose money is this up here that says can't sell anymore? Okay, I was wondering that. All right, I would like to invite David Weiland up. He will be introducing our speaker today.
It's my pleasure to introduce all of you to Mr. Allen Clark. I met him last November at Greenville High School Veterans Day program. He was their keynote speaker. We spoke that day and he agreed to come here. He is a West Point graduate of 1963, and in between the period of 1966 and 67, he was in the Army, in the Special Forces in Vietnam. He's a recipient of the Silver Star, Purple Heart, Combat Infantry Badge. He's a double-leg amputee, and he's got some interesting story to tell you about that. He's a speaker, author, patriot, warrior, and my brother. And you will find out more about that at the end of his presentation. Mr. Clark?
Thank you.
Notice he doesn't ask for help.
I didn't do this stamp your feet deal very well. I'm going to move this over. Well, I'm delighted to be here. I have a connection with Greenville from a long time ago, beginning about 40 years ago, 50 years ago, when I moved into Dallas, and I'd say my name was Allen Clark, and people say, "Oh, are you related to the Allen Clark?" And Greenville, I said, "Well, if he has money, I wish I were." I said, because my family's from Fort Worth and Lower Rio Grande Valley, so I did. But I tell you, I bet you 7 or 8 times through the years, people would say, "Are you related to the Allen Clark family of Greenville?" And I kind of wish I had been. I appreciate being invited today, and thank you, Dave, for the invitation. I have a Silver Star and a Purple Heart, as does our guest, Dr. Nicholson here. We met each other out there in the parking lot, and I noticed he has those decals on the back of his car. And I said, "Well, I have those same too." And you know, we don't really say much about that. When we do our duty in the war and get to do the things that we do and get recognized, it's really something special. I am a Texan. My father was an Army officer for 20 years. All my family does is serve their country. I added up my family traditions and the legacy of the military. Y'all are probably going to have you finish, move around so you can see these. And you can't see the slides. I moved over so that you could see the slides here. My sister and I are the only children of an Army officer, 20 year, and she married a 20-year Air Force officer whose father was a 20-year Air Force officer. She has two sons that are West Point graduates, 25 years service, and a daughter married a West Point graduate who's in Afghanistan now with 25 years service, and the other daughter married a Naval Academy graduate. So I added it up. I have 165 years of military service in my family, and I tell people, we don't make money in my family, we just serve our country. So I can assure you I'm a proud veteran of the United States military, and I was raised in a family where I really had not much of a choice, not by coercion, but by choice, because of what I wanted to do, and that was to serve my country. So I grew up on Army bases, and at age 8, all good Army kids collect patches. So I found a patch that I didn't recognize, and I asked my father what it was. He said, "Son, that is the West Point patch." And it's a school up in New York State that trains officers for the United States military. And he didn't tell me it was free, which I'm sure he was glad once I went that it was free, and I didn't have to take out loans or anything, and he didn't have to pay for anything. But I decided at age 8 I would go, and I did enter the academy at age 17 as the youngest man in my class of 740 cadets. I had gotten a nomination and an appointment to the academy after 11th grade, if you can believe that. I was always running scared, I think I was probably about 3rd or 4th year in the military as a captain before I kind of said, well, I guess I've arrived, I'm as mature as everybody else is. But for 4 years of being a cadet, I never felt that I was very mature because I was so young. They always seemed to put the cadets that had had a year or two of college as my roommates. I guess they figured that they'd teach me things. And sometimes it was the one that was involved with tutoring them. They taught me how to shine shoes. We had to spend a lot of time doing that, of course. I was originally married in Dallas right after my graduation. Came here and met a wonderful woman that after about 3 years in the military career did not interest her. She'd gone to SMU, and blue and red were her favorite colors, not olive drab and Tiggs, going out to the field at Fort Hood, Texas. So after about 3 years, she said, Helen, I really don't want to serve. I don't want to be an Army wife. I'm sorry. I'm not accustomed to that life. And you can go to war, and you can get hurt, you get killed. I just don't want to be a part of that life. So to accommodate my family and my choice of being a good husband, I chose to resign my commission. Talk about 1966. I've been a general's aide at Fort Hood, and I said, okay, I will resign my commission. And I had 2 more years to serve. I had a chance to go to Korea as a general's aide and then come back for a year, and then my resignation would be effective, so after the end of 5 years. So I said, all right, I'll do that. But my conscience really bothered me relative to leaving the military without going to what was the defining time for my classes at West Point, late 50s and early 60s, up until about 68 or 69 or so. And I knew that I would feel really guilty if I avoided Vietnam, which I would have done, could have done, because I had a tour in Korea and then with the general, and then coming back for another year, and I'll be out, and, you know, be a good husband, come back to Dallas, you know. I was going to be an investments guy, stockbroker, you know, and join a country club and play golf 2 or 3 times a week. Well, that was not the life that I was going to be living because of things that happened to me. So I volunteered for Vietnam, and without telling her, which is a big mistake. And I do talks to young people, and I do a lot of talks to just church groups and so forth, testimonies of faith and men's groups and so forth. And I tell them, look, that's one major thing. Always pray with your wife or your family members relative to making big decisions. Well, I didn't do that. I have to be candid with you. Even if I'd done that, I still would have volunteered for Vietnam, because I knew that I had to go. Like my classmates, some had been killed already. To feel good about myself for the rest of my life, I had to go. I didn't want to go to my reunions at West Point and be one of the few guys in the room that didn't go to the war, because all our people went to the war during the 60s. So I volunteered. And when you volunteer in the Army, they typically accept, you know, a voluntary form and so forth. So I did go to Vietnam. And you can put the next one on, Dave. Thank you. Thank you for getting this loaded. Let's see, one more back. There you go. I was originally assigned as a POW, a prisoner of war interrogator. I'd been a debater in high school in West Point, and I guess I figured I could ask a lot of questions, which I could. Penetrating questions. At one time I thought about being a lawyer like my father and my great-grandfather, and I thought that I'd be good at interrogation and so forth. So my first 2 or 3 weeks in country in Vietnam, in a very safe area called Nha Trang, which is on the coast, it's a Riviera of South Vietnam, all the rich French people went there. There were no prisoners to interrogate. So one day I was on an airplane from Saigon, the capital, up to our camp, up to our post up in Nha Trang, and there was a lieutenant colonel on the plane that I recognized his name. He'd been a tactical officer at West Point. We all knew his name, respected him a lot. So I was talking to him. I was telling him how bored I was. He was in charge of the special forces in the Central Highlands of Vietnam, which was the Green Berets. Now, I had transferred from Corps of Engineers to military intelligence, so I was in the branch that would collect intelligence, analyze it, or do reports and so forth. So it was not like an infantry type guy or anything, but he said, Alan, I need an intelligence officer at one of my camps up in the Central Highlands. So I said, well, that sounds good to me. So I transferred very quickly, in country as we call it. And after about a week, I wasn't transferred to that camp. And I said, what's going on? You know, I went to my sergeant, who was high-ranking sergeant in personnel. I said, what's going on? He said, we've changed your orders, sir. I said, you've changed my orders. I'm a captain of the United States Army, and you're not telling me what my orders are? He said, I'm sorry, sir, it's classified. It's a secret operation. We can't tell you yet. Thanks a lot. So, you know, I'm not going to be a POW interrogator, nor am I going to be just a staff officer, you know, doing reports on the enemy in the area and so forth. So eventually got hold of a major who was a fellow West Pointer. You know, we have our own little club, of course, and he said, I'll tell you what it is. Espionage against Cambodia. I said, oh, that's great. So what I did for my first assignment, espionage against Cambodia, was to debrief a defector from Cambodia. It was a Cambodian officer, presumably defected to the United States. I was assigned to be his interrogator to drain him on information, tactical and strategic. He'd gone to Moscow to the Patrice Lumumba University, which is the revolutionary school for revolutionaries all over the world that the communists brought people in, sharp young people, spoke 7 languages. Spent about 15 meetings with him, debriefed him, and then I was reassigned, and my next assignment was to live with several young anti-communist Cambodians, because my mission was Cambodia. So we were to train these people. I lived with 3 Cambodians for about 2 months, and then 2 others, one of them and another one for a month, to insert them by helicopter in triple canopy jungle right next to the Cambodian border, send them in across the border to find out where the enemy positions were, because Cambodia was what's called a privileged sanctuary. They'd come down the Ho Chi Minh Trail, they'd be there in base camps, come across, attack us, kill us, and they go back. So they were protected over there. So we wanted to find out intelligence, how many there were and what they were doing and where they were. So I spent time doing that for 3 months. And then I trained them, and so this was out in the jungle. This was an opening in the jungle, but I lived with them for 3 months. And I will always remember on December 25th, 1966, I saw on military television there, I was in a safe house, I was the American on duty for 24 hours a week. Always had an American 24/7 for 3 months with these guys, in case they, wanted to get out of there. We were paying them, they wouldn't take their pay and leave or get scared or whatever. So I heard Bob Hope was out of the show at Tonson Air Base, the major air base. And I said, oh man, I got to go to that. I said, wait a minute, I can't go to that. I can't leave these people. That would be desertion from my duty. So as much as I wanted to go see Bob Hope, I had to stay and do my duty. We started training them in the jungle. We had AK-47s, which captured from the enemy. We had false IDs, sterilized uniforms, and so if they were captured, they could have what's called plausible denial. And I had the same thing because wore infantry brass, false name, false ID. If I were captured as an intelligence officer, I wouldn't have much of a life to live. Next. My last assignment was up in one of the isolated special forces camps called Dak To. About 100 of them throughout the country and in areas that didn't have large populations or any regular Army, U.S. or Vietnamese units up there. So we were up there. We go up into the villages. This was my bodyguard on the right, and he was also my recruiter. He'd go into the villages and try to find the people that had moved from communist areas where they kicked them out of the villages to go back because they knew the area, to go back and get intelligence on the enemy. Next. I was eventually assigned in this camp, in case y'all can see it there, but the enemy set up across here when they came across with two ambushes in mid-June 1967. This was our inner perimeter. We had mortar pits around here, and remember that concrete place there, and this building, and this place, this bunker right here, and this hillside, because that'll come into the story a little bit in a few minutes. Next. Captain Andy Cottingham was my best friend. I gave a speech in North Carolina last Saturday night, and he's from North Carolina. He visited. Captain Andy Cottingham was a Duke University football player and doctor, physician in Special Forces, and became my best friend there. He'd come into our camp once in a while. I'd take him out to the villages to treat people. They had all sorts of illnesses out there. I mean, they don't exactly have our health care that we have in the United States. Next. On the morning of June 17, 1967, I was in that camp, and where I pointed out on the hillside, the enemy had moved in after 2 ambushes. They killed 2 of our 3 American Green Berets about 5 miles away. We came in with 4 Green Berets and a quick reaction force, as it was called, to retrieve the bodies. And I think apparently all 4 of them were killed. So it was a very high, intensive, dangerous area. My commanding officer in Saigon said, Alan, I'm picking you up at 9 o'clock Saturday morning, June 17th. I don't want you captured and your operations closed down anyway because the enemy's all over the area. North Vietnamese, regular Army, Communist Battalion, pith helmets, khaki uniforms, AK-47s. They were regulars. They weren't just Viet Cong. They were regulars. So the morning of the 17th, I was the American on duty between 4 to 6 in the camp. We walked the inner perimeter, make sure people weren't trying to come over the inner perimeter berms that we had and knife us in our bunkers and so forth. So I was on duty when the attack started, and I did the things that you're trained to do when an attack starts. You want to get flares up in the air so you can see if the enemy's coming after you, by ground attack. And you also want to get your mortar pits manned for counter battery fire, as it's called. So in the course of that, a round from the enemy up on that hillside I pointed out landed to my left rear. I landed on my stomach. He yelled out, "Oh God, I'm dead." This medic, Jimmy Hill, heard me and started up out of his bunker, took a piece of shrapnel on his left shoulder on Saturday morning about 4:30. It wasn't taken out until about 2 o'clock on Sunday the next day. He treated 70 people after treating the Americans that were wounded in the camp, my being one of the 9. 2 Americans were killed. Next. Too many. One more back. Maybe one more. Let me see here. One more. Forward. Forward. That's it. Okay. I pointed out that concrete. I was right there when I was wounded. Now this is an example of how heavy the barrage was with mortars and rockets. This was not a picture. A friend of mine took it. I think that doctor took it, sent it to me years later. But that's the kind of blast that can happen when one of those shells hits. It breaks through the sandbags, it breaks through the side of the building. 2 people that were Air Force people were in our camp overnight with spotter planes. They both were killed within about 10 feet of me. One of them came into the bunker sitting right next to me with a fin in his head. I remember that. I barely remember everything. I told my medic, Jimmy Hill, I said, Jimmy, I'm going to die. I said, just be sure that my wife knows who I am, and I'm undercover here. He says, yeah, I know about that, Captain. I said, be sure that she knows that how I got hurt, because I thought I was going to die. I mean, I felt like I was going to die. I couldn't see my legs, but I could feel that I was close to death. But he went through the barrage and got morphine and plasma for me and saved my life. I'm still in touch with him. It's kind of special, Jim, to be in touch with the medic that took care of you on the battlefield. You know. Next. I came back to Brooke General Hospital in San Antonio, and I was there 15 months. Got fitted for my legs, and then went to SMU, 68 to 70, got an MBA. In the 8th month of my 15-month tour, I was really cratering. I was scared, I was mad, I was angry. All of the different things that you go through when you have a traumatic experience. And I cracked. I went 4 days without sleep. I went to closed psychiatric ward, which was horrible. I mean, I saw a psychiatrist 3 days a week and had to have antidepressants during that time, much less for about 7 or 8 years after that, until the mid-70s. I do a lot of public speaking to young people, and I tell them that beginning about 1975, because of my faith walk, going to church, studying the Bible, and my faith in Jesus the Christ, that I was able to heal from post-traumatic stress and no more pills. And many times those youth audiences stand up and applaud because they know how many kids in their high schools and in their lives are taking drugs, and they know how dangerous it is. And they applauded the fact that I got off of, 45 years ago when I was about 30 to 35 years old. It was not an easy time to learn to walk on these artificial legs. Next. Learned to ski, which is kind of cool. Did it twice. That's enough. Got a bucket list early. I didn't want to break, fall down again and break my femur, which I broke at the hospital where I worked, Dallas VA Medical Center, about 15 years ago. Anyway, I slipped on some water, so I have a titanium rod. And actually, all the bells and whistles go off with TSA at the airport, because I got mortar shrapnel in me and this deal. And it bothers the heck out of me to wear my Purple Heart cap and still have myself frisked. It really bothers me, but that's life today and the track we're on in the United States. Next. I was like this tree. Cruddy looking tree, dragging on the ground, I wasn't secure for 8 or 9 years. Next. I began to study my Bible, and the biggest thing I learned was good versus evil, God versus the devil, and my current wife, to whom I've been married for 16 years. By the way, I was divorced 30 years ago from that wife, but didn't want me to be in the military anymore. And she divorced me for a variety of reasons. She's never remarried, but she divorced me because she had what I call spousal post-traumatic stress, I believe, which families can have, and especially spouses and children of someone that comes back from a war damaged with mental and emotional issues from what we have to go through in combat. So she could not handle all of that. And I'm not exactly, was not an easy guy to live with for several years either, so she was damaged. Anyway, we have a good relationship, we pray for our children, and that's the way it is, but she had never forgiven me for volunteering for Vietnam. One day, I guess I was going into surgery, it's like truth serum, to get yourself knocked out with the la-la stuff, going to the la-la land when you're getting surgery. And so I admitted to her that I volunteered for Vietnam. Big mistake, number 2. To tell her that I went and got hurt so bad and volunteered. So it took 25 years to forgive me. Next. But I learned about good versus evil, and that relates to my second book, my third book, by the way, which I have here, Soldier's Blood and Bloody Money. This is my commercial. It's $20, but I studied the reason we've gone to wars. The media and the politicians and the bankers the big bankers, don't worry about Alliance, whatever your bank is. Not you guys. You guys are safe. And small factory industrialists, but big deal people throughout history and religions and everything. Religious people got us into wars that people like me have to go fight and solve, okay? And give our lives and get ourselves damaged for life. So I've studied that. So that's a very controversial, sensational book that talks about my Christian faith, spiritual warfare, the forces in history that have come together to foster and foment wars. 4 years, it's 30 or 40 years of thinking about it, and 4 intense years of research and resources and writing of that book. The other book I have is Valor in Vietnam, which is stories historical about Vietnam. So those are available. That's my commercial. I want to be like this. This is what I finally, in a way, got to, you know. Strong trunk system, good root system, well-manicured lawns around me and so forth, strong leaves and branches and so forth. I'm still working on that. Next. That's fine. You can go take a break, Dave. You don't need to leave it on that last one right there. I'll come back to that. Yeah, you can. Okay. Thank you very much. It was not easy, as I indicated, having to have this happen to me. I had gone to church as a young man. I was in a church where we had acolytes and youth groups and so forth, so I was in everything. You know, I was at church 3 or 4 times a week, and I was an acolyte, and I served just about every Sunday. And but you know, I had what you call head knowledge of the Lord. I didn't really have heart knowledge. Believe me, when you lose your legs, left leg traumatically from the wound, the other leg being broken in 5 places, and 10 days after the wounds, I got back to Brooke General Hospital, amazingly enough, on a medevac, you know, across the Pacific and all. The doctor came and said, "Captain, your right leg is broken in 5 places. Says you will walk better with 2 artificial legs than 1, and a real gimp leg broken in 5 places. So, you know, what are you going to do? You're going to say, "Sure, doc, take it off." You know, what are you going to say? You're under morphine, which I was under for 6 weeks, you know, before I, you know, got lower levels of antidepressants, which I took for 6 or 7 years. So what are you going to do? So I did that, and then I went to a church here in town in Dallas. I lived in Dallas when I moved for SMU, and really got my faith act together. And I realized that I could heal from my post-traumatic stress. I didn't need to be dysfunctional. I didn't need to make it be a disorder for the rest of my life and to bother me, go into drugs, go into alcoholism, or you know, having a conflict-ridden life. I decided I was going to get my act together, so I did as a Christian. And you know, I know it's a secular audience, but I am 77 years old, folks. I'm too old to worry about it anymore. You know, I got to tell it like it is. It is the Lord's love for me and in my life that caused me to be able to stand up here and to tell you all this story and not be, you know, drinking too much or still on drugs or something like that, or antidepressants. Continue to see a psychiatrist, which a lot of our vets continue to do, even after Vietnam, even after Korea, as you know, doctor. So I'm what you might call a success figure relative to that. I went in a couples Bible study and a cell group, as they called it at the church, and talked about different things, and I just kind of weaned myself off, you know. I had gone, my first job after graduate school was with Ross Perot. I interviewed with Ross Perot in 1970, 50 years ago. He just died last summer, you know. And he hired me to be his personal financial assistant. If I'd been able to stay with Ross Perot with the pressures that I would have had to put on myself to do the job right, because he didn't put pressures on me, I'd have been well situated financially today, very satisfied economically and everything. But I pushed myself very hard as his assistant for investments and so forth, and his investments 50 years ago were nothing like what they are today, I can assure you. And I cracked again, so I had to go to the hospital for a week. And then I had another episode in 1973 where I just stayed at home for a week when the POWs came back from Vietnam. They had the big ceremony downtown at the Cotton Bowl. And I was the representative at that Cotton Bowl ceremony in 1973 for the Wounded in Action from Vietnam. So I've had a lot of wonderful honors that have accrued to me. I believe in prayer. About 25 years ago, my first wife, for 15 years or so, harbored resentment toward me, toward volunteering for Vietnam without telling her. And I was in a Bible study one night, and the pastor took me over to the library in the home, and he said, Alan, anything special bothering you? I said, yeah, it's been about 25 years, I guess it was, that my wife has never forgiven me. We were on our way to divorce at the time. She had initiated the divorce. And I said, I really don't want a divorce, but she's moving toward divorce. I said, she's never forgiven me for volunteering for Vietnam and then causing this trouble to myself, much less to her as my spouse, who had to be there for me and be strong for those years when I just couldn't make decisions. I could not take any conflict. If anything was conflicting, with a builder on my house or anything in work, I just said, handle it. I can't handle it. So she did. And she was put under a lot of stress, which I'm grateful for, that she handled it for me. So he said, well, we're going to pray something called the labor of the harvest. I said, what in the world is that? And he said, well, Alan, you make choices in life. Your prayer to have her make a choice not to divorce you, which is what I wanted, and not to forgive you, it is not within her power. It is within her power, but the Lord will not override her choice of her emotions because you pray for it. I said, well, what do I do? He said, we pray labors of the harvest concept. I said, what does that mean? He said, that means that she hears something on the radio, watches something on TV, reads something, or somebody talks to her, and she makes a decision to know that if she does not forgive you, she will not be forgiven. I said, I'll try anything. So we prayed that prayer. 2 weeks later, I'm in Durham, North Carolina, working in a mortgage company. She was about to file for divorce. This was going to happen, period. But she called me 2 weeks later after this prayer, folks. I believe in prayer. She said, Alan, I got to forgive you for volunteering for Vietnam without telling me. And I said, why? She says, I was watching a television show last night. Marilyn Hickey out of Denver, Colorado on TBN. And it says, if you do not forgive all others, you will not be forgiven. Bingo. I believe in prayer, okay, for sure. And if any of you out there don't believe in prayer, try it. Believe in it, because it works. Now, there's a lot of things I can say. I've had an incredible life. I can talk for 2 or 3 hours. I've talked so much, I've told your Madam President here that I've talked so much, my wife sometimes says, shut up, She's had it, how much I talk. But I'm used to talking because of being a debater and, different things. And I've been involved in politics. I've run for public office, ran for state treasurer in Texas and lost, ran for county judge in Travis County, which is a real stupid mistake. Travis County is a little bit liberal for me. I didn't quite win that one. But, I've served my country on a governor's staff, Governor Bill Clements, 1979, for 4 years, 2.5 years, served President George H.W. Bush administration for 4 years. I've had a great life. The Lord preserved me on the battlefield to come back, not to do anything special, not that anything I've done has been special, but to live a life and have 2 daughters. One's a Harvard MBA, one's very successful in the pharmaceutical sales business, And my first wife lived with my daughter up in Maryland that's a pharmaceutical salesperson. I tell people she's a drug pusher, And she didn't like me to say that. I'd rather say a pharmaceutical salesman. But the other one's very smart. She put this book together to be self-published. I had been 5'9" when I was wounded. The doctor comes to my bed, I'd be 4'6" on my knees, because I have just very small stumps, as we call it. The doctors like to call it residual limbs, they're stumps to me. So when I was in politics, I was really stumping out there, political talks and so forth. So doctor said, how tall do you want to be? I said, I want to be 6'2". My dad was 6'2", tall Texan. Mother was about 5'3", so I ended up in the middle at 5'9". And so he didn't say anything about 30 seconds. And he says, Alan, he says, really, you should be shorter because you'll walk better. I said, why'd you ask me? Attitude, why'd you ask me? And I said, how short? He said, 5'8" or 5'7". So in 1968, I did go to 5'8". 1978, I go on the governor's staff down in Austin, been involved in local politics here in Dallas. And I go on his staff. I have the first office outside the governor's office. I'm a special assistant for administration for 2.5 years. President Reagan originally wanted me to be the #2 man at the VA. I went there for 2 weeks, had a clash with the #1 guy. I don't work for jerks. He was a jerk. So I left, came back here, went in the oil business with a friend of mine. And then, when I went to work for Clements, I went to 5'11". And then when I came back from the George H.W. Bush administration, 89 to 93, where I was an assistant secretary of Veterans Liaison and ran the National Cemetery System, I went and got a new set of legs to 6'1". So in 1995, I came back working for Veterans Hospital, and I went to 6'2". So when I talk to kids, especially, I said, look, there's two morals to this story. Number one, never give up on your goals in life. And number two, grow in all your jobs. Thank you very much. I don't know if I'm going to sell any of these books. They're $20, but I'd like a volunteer to help me, please. That's it, Madam President. Oh, my. Give this back to you.
Thank you. That was certainly amazing. And the one thing I will say, I'm sure everybody in here can understand, is I don't work for jerks either, except for my problem is now that I'm self-employed, so I can't get away from it.
You don't want to be the jerk.
Yeah, I can't get away from it. I have two things that I would like to, very quickly as everybody's gathering their stuff up. Remember that next week is Chili Fest, so there is no meeting on Wednesday. Okay, so no meeting next week.
But we will be setting up.
But we will be setting up, so we,
Even if
Debbie
you could
needs,
just give us an hour.
Debbie needs help. It does not have to be all day. Come for 30 minutes, come for an hour. Help set up. So no meeting next week. Help with setup for the auction. Visitors Day is March 11th, so that's 3 weeks. So we're not going to be here next week. We'll be here the following week, and then the following week after that is Visitors Day. So please make sure that you, one of the things hey guys, just very quickly please. The Visitors Day, the guests that we're going to have that day, I feel like that we're probably going to have, the presenter we're going to have, I feel like we're going to have a lot of visitors want to come. We need a head count. I do not need to be ordering 50 extra plates of food and only 10 people show up. So if you have somebody that you know for sure that you're going to be inviting, please start emailing me, texting me, something so I can order food appropriately.
Who's the guest, if you don't mind?
Lieutenant
Colonel Allen West.
Allen West.
Yeah, Lieutenant Colonel Allen West. And I do know that we already have a large veteran presence going to be there as well. So
He did the foreword for this book, by the way.
There you go.
He's Alan B. Jr., I'm Alan B. Sr.
Hey, what is our theme for this year? Rotary connects the world. That's right. Right there. There you go. Okay, I don't know where my bell is. Oh, over here. Anything to bring before Rotary? That's Rotary for today. Thank you.